Welcome to All Right in Sin City, a podcast about writers and writing in the Windsor, Detroit region. Your podcasters today are
Sarah Jarvis, former bookseller, publishing rep, and literary festival chair.
Kim Conklin, Windsor-based writer and filmmaker.
and me, Irene Moore Davis, author, educator, and local historian.
Our guest today is Ray Robertson. Ray Robertson is the author of 9 novels, 4 collections of nonfiction, and a book of poetry. His work has been nominated for several awards and have been translated into many languages. His nonfiction work, Why Not? 15 Reasons to Live, has been made into a film, a documentary. Born and raised in Chatham, Ontario, he lives in Toronto. Estates Large and Small is his latest book, published by Windsor publisher Biblioasis. Welcome, Ray.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Lovely to have you. So, what writing formats, and the ones I just listed, what writing formats did you use to learn the craft of writing, do you think?
Well, I wanted to be a novelist, and that's what I started doing. But when I came back to Canada from grad school, I did a lot of journalism, and I hadn't really done any of that before. I studied philosophy at university. I didn't have writer friends. I had philosophy friends, I guess. So when I came back, I wrote for everybody, books in Canada, Quill and Choir, Globe and Mail, Toronto Star. So I started to write more nonfiction, which I hadn't planned. And I think that just as much as writing fiction was helpful. And so just the process of just writing and writing and writing. People say, should I take this course? Should I just read and write and read and write and read and write? And a lot of things I'm glad aren't available to be read because they probably weren't that good, but they allowed me to find my voice. So now, when I seem to be alternating between fiction and nonfiction, I think it's pretty much the same voice, which I think is a good thing. It's a limitation, but it's also a good thing. So I find that any kind of writing, even people who do technical writing, they're working with words, they're trying to be concise, they're trying to be lively. I think we get too high in the sky about it. It's just writing, just writing.
Which is easier to get into, or do you find now you can just switch between poetry, prose?
Oh, well, I'm not really a poet. I wrote a book of haiku, but what I find is that whenever I get sick of one genre, the other one's more appealing. So I say I kind of have been writing novels and then nonfiction, then a novel and a nonfiction. Now the next couple of years are going to be a couple books of nonfiction. Because honestly, I think I'm running out of time as a novelist. I think a novel is about the outside world, and frankly, I don't go out very much anymore. I don't really know the world, the contemporary world that much. I don't have a cell phone, so that eliminates me from like 90% of most movies and novels because there's usually something with the phone that happens. So I just find that recently nonfiction has been easier, but it's probably because I'm sort of just limitations of what I have to say. I think the new novels are probably for people who are younger than me, and not because they're better, just because they're in the midst of it, where I just try to hide from the world now. So it's pretty. So nonfiction is nice right now because I'm writing a lot about music. So it's a delight to be able to just sort of pull up on the moat and just write my own little world. And so so next year it's a nonfiction book on the Grateful Dead, so it's got nothing to do with the literary world. It's just a little project for me, and it's kind of it's nice. Whereas a novel is, as both of you know, is you're creating the whole world. You're responsible for everything, which is exciting, intoxicating, and wonderfully liberating. But also it means that you have to be the director, the producer, the actors, the music, everything. So you gain something, you lose something. So right now I'm really enjoying writing nonfiction, and I think it's the same thing. You want to write nice sentences, you want to be funny, you want to be smart, you want to be provocative, you want it to tell a story. I think it's really the same thing. A good biography is a good story, right? Not that I write biographies, but a good biography to me feels like, wow, I just read this novel, but everything was true in it, So yeah, I think just good writing is good writing,
Speaking of, who were the terrific writers that inspired your early explorations into writing, and
Yeah.
are there any new ones that have come along?
I don't read anybody anymore that's not dead at least 100 years. I just pick. My wife is really the reader of contemporary stuff because I'm always working on a book, so it never feels. I never, if I write 3 or 4 hours and then in the evening, I'm going to read. I don't want to read some spectacular new novelist and say, "How did she do that?" I just want to sink into my. So like, I'm starting to read like a 600-page biography of George Moore, this late 19th century Irish writer. Just totally different world. But when I was younger, yeah, as I said, I didn't study literature at university. I studied philosophy. So all the reading I did was sort of for my own pleasure on my own time. So the two contemporary writers, Barry Hannah and Tom McGuane, who's from Michigan originally, and then a book by Carson McCullers called The Heart is a Lonely Hunter. It really blew my mind that at 23 years old, she wrote a book or published a book that had, from a Nishan point of view, that had 5 different characters. Like, how could she do that? That was pretty mesmerizing. And then I think Jack Kerouac, not in terms of him as a storyteller, but in terms of the freedom of the language, which I found very appealing, because I found one of the reasons I didn't read a lot of contemporary fiction at that time, I probably still don't, is the language is rather pedestrian, very functional, very utilitarian, which has its place. But for me, the most important thing for a book is the voice. And if I don't, it doesn't mean I have to like the voice. I could find it kind of like, an anti-hero, kind of annoying, but kind of intriguing. And I just find, so what I found with like Thomas McGuane and Barry Hannah and McCullers and Kerouac and other writers too, was that they really valued the way the sentence was put together. I mean, I don't know about you, but when I finish a book, I'm left with a sense of the voice. And I use this example all the time, but if I want to, I could pull Virginia Woolf's essays or her journals or her diaries off the shelf right now. They're in the other room, library. And I would instantly be communing with that other person. She's still alive because her voice, and not a lot of things do survive. I mean, she died in 1941. So what's that? It's 81 years she's been gone. Just as fresh and as lively. And I'm not saying I agree with everything she says, but blah, blah, blah. And that's the thing that's the most important to me. And those early writers, it wasn't so much like, I think they're, it wasn't so much the storytelling as the fact that I was really attracted to writers who sounded like no one else, with the pros and cons. I mean, I don't think my stuff's everybody's cup of tea, and sales figures prove that out, But I do feel like you're getting a real voice, and for better and for worse, and that's true of all the art that I like, the music that I like. It's not for everyone, and that's okay, but it is nice to feel that there are people who, do hear it and then say, "Oh, I like that." There's a story that Jerry Garcia tells, the Grateful Dead, since we're talking about Estates Large and Small, which has a dead component, and he said, people who like the Dead are people who like green licorice. Not a lot of people do it, but the people who do really, really, really like it. And I thought that's a cool ambition for a writer. Like, I don't want to be everybody's cup of tea because it doesn't sound very interesting. But those who do, tend to like it. So I'm okay with that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've seen green licorice around. So, but congratulations on Estates Large and Small, the new book. It is a contemporary take on how our lives have been changed by economic and even pandemic circumstances.
Yeah.
So, what was your thinking behind including the pandemic in this work?
Yeah, I think when Kim and I did an event in Windsor, I think we might even talked about this. It wasn't initially written. It was initially started before the pandemic. So I was probably a third, quarter of the way through, more than a quarter, maybe a third, maybe a half, I don't know. And I had a choice to keep going as it was. And certainly a lot of books have been published since then but as I got going, it seemed like, I try not to think too much. Thinking gets you in trouble, but it felt like Phil's conundrum in the book, in the sense that he sort of successfully isolated himself from like Well, it was kind of mirrored by the fact that everyone is isolating now. So I thought, well, what a metaphor that is, because Phil is the last thing you call a people person. He's probably borderline misanthropic, but even he misses that interaction with people. And I thought, you know what? I'm not doing this to be contemporary and go, oh, I wrote a pandemic novel. It just seemed to sort of accentuate what was the feeling. You know, a good book, it isn't so much like on page 4, you know, I must explore these themes. No, it's a feeling. And the feeling in the book is a guy who has isolated. Now everyone's isolated. And he's sort of like, geez, is this enough to live a good life? Because he has a good life, but maybe other people are a part of a good life. And that's something that I think I struggle with as a person, in the sense that, you know, you become a writer because you don't play well with others. So you don't have to take any input, you know. And I don't have kids, I have dogs. And so I'm pretty much a solo person, but even I sort of realized, gee, you know, without people, it's just not as rewarding. I guess everyone should know that. I came to that late in life. And I think that's one of the situations that fills it. And so the pandemic just seemed to sort of, you know, manifest that theme. So I thought, oh, I'm going to go with this, you know, and so I had to change a few things early on because of, you know, like pandemic compatible. But I really thought that it was the right fit, you know. So.
Well, as well as the pandemic, some of the other themes that kind of follow these characters around are health and mortality. You know, one character faces a life-altering illness, the other one deals with dementia and has to use a wheelchair, or another has to use a wheelchair. And even though the main character himself is still a relatively young man in his early 50s, what was important about bringing these issues to light in the work?
Yeah, I don't really, you know, I don't know about you two, but I don't really choose my themes. They sort of choose me, sort of, you know. And you can tell that that someone has decided, hey, this is a hot topic, button topic today. I think I'll write about it. It just seems to me all my books struggle with explore a couple of things. You know, what is a meaningful life? If you're lucky enough to live somewhere, you've got enough to eat and a roof over your head. Well, what do you do now? You know, do you spend it on like YouTube? Do you spend it, you know, taking drugs? Do you spend it helping out? What do you do? And the other question, of course, is mortality and the not just for ourselves, but the people we care about around us. And so I just keep coming back to those things. And I hope that in different books, they're approached in a different way. So it's not the same boring, you know, different points of view. I think Milan Kundera said somewhere that, you know, a writer usually only has one big theme, if they're lucky, and that their success or their growth or whatever progress as an artist is usually measured by how they come at it from different points of view over the course of the career. So for him, it was always about freedom, you know, of course, coming from a satellite state of the Soviet Union and being, you know, a dictatorship. So it was always sexual freedom, political freedom, artistic. So for me, I think it's always been about meaning. You know, when I was growing up in Chatham and decided I want to go to, you know, university to study philosophy, you know, because it was exciting because, you know, where I grew up, people didn't sit around all day and go, what is the meaning of life? You know, they're too busy living their lives, trying to put a food on the table and raise their kids. And that, you know, I was lucky enough. My parents, working class family who emphasized education. Now, they didn't want me to study philosophy, I'm sure, but that was really exciting to me. And of course, I left and I started writing. But I think those preoccupations are still there. And I think that some of the most interesting conversations about death aren't about death. Like I published a book a couple of years, or I guess 3 years ago now, called How to Die, a book about being alive. And really it was about what death can teach us about how to live a more fulfilled, interesting life. So I don't think it's morbid at all. I think it's very much to our benefit, especially when you get older and you think, you know, we're going to be in this house 20 years, February 1st. And so we moved, I'll be 56. So I was 36 when we moved in. So the next time it'll be 20 years, which seems like that. It seems like it just went by. I'll be 76. So that's kind of scary, interesting, fascinating. And, you know, I can't help but I think one of the advantages of being really lazy as I am is that I write about what hits me in the face and interests me. You know, I don't go looking for what would be a great topic? Or any success I've had has been entirely incidental or luck in terms of it fits with the zeitgeist. It's like, oh, this is the moment of this. Estates Large and Small seems to have done a little bit better than the last novel, and I think the other novel, 1979, was a good novel, but I think this one just had more of those things that people say, oh, the pandemic, oh, mortality, euthanasia, Grateful Dead, little topics, which I don't choose. They just sort of happen. And then if you have them, you can take advantage of them. You'd be silly not to, but I can forget what our question was now.
You got there.
All right, okay. And then some. And then some.
Well, and then some. The main characters in Estates Large and Small take on a project discussing Western philosophy.
Right.
And in a sense, that becomes another character in the book.
That's a nice way of putting it. Thank you. That's a nice way of putting it.
Yeah. And so why did you want to interweave the lives of these characters with a discussion of this wide-ranging topic?
Well, two things you said are, well, I like the way you put it, but also I think in the earlier draft, I know that you two talk a lot about writing, the writing process is, for aspiring writers. Well, in my first drafts, I think the philosophy stuff didn't interweave with their lives enough. I think I was more concerned with, basically Phil is this, he's got this time on his hands. He never went to university. He's been around books his whole life. He says, hey, I've got all these books around me. I'll keep a little journal. I'll do my little crash course in the history of Western philosophy, starting with the Greek Socratics, working my way through the 20th century. Then he meets Caroline, and they do it in person, a lot more fun because they drink wine and they have cheese and they smoke pot and they talk about philosophy. But I think initially it wasn't integrated enough because eventually whatever they talked about had to sort of illuminate their lives, her journey, his journey, or whatever. So that was what my hope was. But I think initially I was so concerned with getting the philosophy stuff. It was a little stiff, it was a little dense. I fought with my editor a little bit, but he was right in terms of we're kind of losing the characters in the Immanuel Kant or the David Hume. And so a lot of it over the process was just cutting a little bit here, cutting a little bit there, letting go of it. You're really attached to it when you write it because it's clever. I'm a good enough writer that even something that should be cut. Someone told me once, even bad writers cut bad writing, but good writers cut good writing. And that's hard to do because you're like, oh, I love that line, but so it doesn't really, it's kind of slowing things down. So, I kind of thought, I look at my shelves, I got all my university philosophy books, which I don't really look at much anymore. I thought it'd be fun to go back in and see how much of it, the whole philosophy stuff is really a corollary to Phil's thing about being isolated from the world, whether by choice or by pandemic, in the sense that how much does this philosophy stuff really apply to life? How much of it is just elevated cocktail party conversation? How much of it can it really be? So when he and Caroline embark upon this, I do feel that they sort of separate the wheat from the chaff. Go, hey, you know what? This is valuable. This does make me think about this and that, and this is more this and that. And I kind of enjoyed that. It gave me a chance to see philosophy through a different set of eyes, and I enjoyed it. And I enjoyed being snarky and rude about it, but them having that, but also when something did resonate, like when Caroline found a line that really meant something to her, like when she reads that line by I think it's Marcus Aurelius, I'm not sure, but when she, every moment is like eternity, that's kind of like, and it really applies to her life, which we won't get into because it kind of gives a story, but every moment. So anyway, I hope that it will illuminate who they were, and also it gave them a chance to talk, which I didn't plan on writing like a love story. It's not really my MO. And when they got together and started talking, I really thought that they really were comfortable with each other, and really they kind of sparks flew off each other, not in a big brassy way, but so yeah, that's kind of what they do. And I enjoyed it. I like listening to them talk. Yeah.
Can I follow up on that just a little? Some writers, talk about the fact that they write fiction to kind of find out what they think about something. Would you say that was kind of a process for you, that you were in doing this book, you were finding out what you thought was meaningful?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I wouldn't just say fiction, I'd say not. I mean, nonfiction, you think, well, you don't have that room because it's a subject that already exists. But this book that I wrote about the Grateful Dead next year, it's called All the Years Combined, The Grateful Dead in 50 Shows. And it's not just 50 concert tributes. It hopefully tells the story of how much success is possible when you get that big and how you make compromises. I mean, it's all that kind of thing. And I wasn't sure. I had a feeling. So writing, yeah, to me, hugely is a process of clarification. And not that at the end of the book you go, okay, well, I got mortality figured out. What's next? Now I think I'll take on pollution, but I do feel that that's how I think. Day-to-day life, not so much. Just trying to get through the day without hurting myself or others too much, and just But for those 3 hours or whatever it is, 4 or 5 days a week or whatever it is, it's like meditating in a sense. Not that you're not furiously writing, but you are, and wearing those masks that you use in fiction or nonfiction. Like you can have a character say something that you would never say. Well, that's not who I am, politically. And you put it down, and then you explore it, and you think, well, I think one of the things that really, this is kind of off topic, but really saddens me that people don't read as much as they used to, in the sense that fiction allows you to explore things that in your day-to-day life you're expected to have very codified points of view. I'm this, I'm that, I'm left, I'm right. Whereas fiction or good writing really mirrors how we're a lot more elusive than that. We're a lot more gray than that. We're a little bit of this, a little bit of that. We don't have to have those firm boundaries. And I find that's one of the things that really it saddens me. We really live in a world of like instant opinions, and it's almost seen as a weakness if you're reflective or if you don't have an immediate take on something, I would say, this is my 14th book, and I probably thought about these things in every one of those books. I don't know if there's anything more than you can say, something like Wittgenstein said when he said that, the study of philosophy doesn't lead to answers, it leads to clarifications of the question, which might be closer to the truth, really, like in the sense that I do think now that death has a lot to teach us about life. And I might not have been able to put it like that before I wrote How to Die. No, I don't have any more clarification as to, like all of us, every day brings its own challenges. But I really think that's one of the reasons that we do write, and why it's important to read, and not necessarily great literature, just reading. The process itself is so antithetical to our culture, which is instantaneous and electric, and it's almost a revolutionary act. It's interesting as readings decline and we bemoan it, but in a way it's become more important. It's almost like if someone's a reader, they're living in the world a little differently, and I think that's really interesting, and the book's kind of about that too. I mean, he's a bookseller in a world that increasingly doesn't want books. Sure, Toronto real estate, rents, that kind of thing, pandemic, but also he finds, and as most booksellers will tell you, fewer people are reading. But on the other hand, the people who do read have become even more like what you people are doing. I mean, I'm sure you're not getting paid that much, a couple $100,000 a year each. That's probably about it. You have other things. This is because you love books, right? So it forces people to bond together and support, like Biblioasis bookstore in Windsor. I mean, it's doing great. People sort of feel like it's important that we support this. So the downside is, yeah, maybe it is endangered. On the other hand, it's nice to know who your comrades are and allies, even though we may disagree with this or that. So there's something, I think that's in the book as well, the world of books, the future of books. So yeah, I am pessimistic. But on the other hand, there's something quite rewarding about people who I've gotten, a few emails or, whatever to my website about this book. And sometimes it's the book's good, but also it's just like a book about books, thanks to that. It's kind of a noble thing, it's not seen that way as much, especially in North America and Europe. If you're a writer, it's like you're almost as good as a lawyer, or a doctor. And they treat you that way. You almost feels weird. It's respected, So anyway, I don't know how we got on that topic, but whatever.
Well, let's get back to the book for a second. So speaking of philosophy, the book also reads like a love letter to the guitar work, in particular
Yeah,
of Jerry Garcia and the Grateful Dead.
yeah,
What was the role of music in this particular book? We know you're working on another one, but what did it
yeah.
play here?
The music's in a lot of my books. This one, well, it was like a lot of fiction. Again, as I'm sure you both know and your listeners know, is that you start with something real usually, and then it becomes something else. I really did sort of discover the sound of Garcia's guitar in my late 40s, and it was a late in life revelation. I'd always listened to, rock and country and blues, and written a lot about that. But Garcia's guitar tone took me like someone else might get taken with John Coltrane's horn or Miles Davis. So it was one of those kind of deals. And working it into the book, I think it provides, Phil is pretty out there as I don't know, agnostic, or he's sort of a materialist in that sense. But Garcia's guitar connects him to something beyond, that world that we all experience through nature or music or, children or whatever. It's that I'm part of something bigger. And I think that's important. My novels are kind of a closed circuit in the sense that there really is no ultimate metaphysical or nonfiction, solution. But it doesn't mean we don't have these intimations of great beauty and grace, and that's the way that he feels about the music. Although in the book, he's sort of gotten sick of it. So it's another kind of impasse that he's at. His bookstore is closed down. He's doing that. He's between his people, and then he's sort of like sick, tired of. He had this relationship and it breaks up. So he spent a lot of time smoking pot, watching YouTube, listening to eating takeout, listening to Jerry Garcia. So that's kind of reached its end too. But it's throughout the book, and at the end of the book, it's still an important part. And I think it's because music has that place in my life and a lot of people's lives. I mean, it sort of touches on place. It goes to places where words can't really go. I wrote a book called Lives of the Poets with Guitars, and it's sort of 13 essays about favorite musicians and blah blah blah. And one of the epigraphs of the book is a song by a wonderful songwriter by the name of Gene Clark, who used to be in the Byrds. It's from a song called Strength of Strings. And the epigraph I use is, he's talking about music. So he brings me words that are not the strength of strings. Words are great, but almost words get close to those ineffable moments. It's like the mystical experience, and I don't know what it means. I just know how it affects us. And I feel that unless I have that in my life, my wife's like that with nature. Like she just said, I got to go hiking the other day. So she and the dog went. They had to go. She goes a lot in the summer because that sort of reconnects. She's from Northern Ontario, so it kind of reconnects her. And for me, it's headphones, little red wine, some good, and usually not music with words anymore. Now that I'm older, it's more, instrumentals and sound of an instrument. It sort of takes you there. So that's an important part of the book too. But I don't want to be heavy-handed about it. Hopefully it's because humor is supposed to be an important part of any book that I want to write or read. Because life is like that, life's not this unrelenting solemnity. I mean, I don't want to read a book like that because I don't think it's representative of life. It just, when we have sorrow in our lives, one of the ways we recover is through humor. We start seeing a point of view to it. So I think it's an important part without being, wisecracky or shtick, So anyway.
I want to circle back to something that you brought up. You mentioned feedback to your website.
Yeah.
And the main character is an antiquarian and used bookseller. And you sneak in some funny comments about the business of writing. For example, during discussion about Locke, Carol Ann teases Phil, the bookseller, about why writers write.
Right.
Did you have a little bit of yourself in there? Is this a wry comment about the business of being a writer?
Yeah, well, I think you've hit on some. I mean, we talked about earlier about how you write books to figure things out. I can see myself saying things in Roy's voice. Like he would say, why do all these kids today with their Facebook and they're putting pictures, and she'll say, then Caroline will say, well, isn't that what artists do? Look what I wrote. There's no reason for us you could write a great book or make a great painting and no one could see it. And so, yeah, I don't even have the answers to that because here I am sort of condoning this contemporary mania with like showing people what I had for lunch And yet I'm saying, yeah, but look at my haiku I wrote about lunch, So again, contradictions, right? And I think that's healthy. I think there's too many periods in our world, too many full stop. I like question marks, ellipsis. And so I'm not sure there is something in that. So yeah, I mean, Phil struggles with technology, and I think I'm the same, and that becomes part of the book in the sense that he's forced into that world though. He kind of has to, like the woman he hires to help him with his website. She's like, you got to have someone doing social media. You have to. And so he gets his younger nephew to do it, and it's all a mystery to him, as it is to me. Like I have a friend who does my Instagram and Facebook because I have to, and my website. And you give him a few bucks, and he does it. And he does a great job. But it's just I wasn't in that world when it happened, and I just haven't adapted to it that way. I know I live in that world, which again is why I feel less warranted in writing about that world, unless I write from the point of view of a person who's befuddled by it, because yeah. So yes, he's in that world, that social media world, Instagram, all that stuff, but it's a bit of a mystery because what he wants to do is something that the world doesn't really want. He wants to smell books, actually smell the books and go, that's a lovely collection, but hopefully there are enough people that again, that he can be in that little cloistered world. I mean, it's really a book about making your own little universe, your own little world, and the dangers of that. Because when you make your little world, that means you exclude certain things, right? And that's one of the things that I think is in the book. Like he's got a good life, but I think he has a better life when he meets Caroline. I think his world, gets bigger, and I think that's one of the things the book's about, like how much that balance between how much of ourselves is for ourselves, how much is for others, and what makes for a happy, fulfilled life as much as possible.
Okay, your nonfiction work, like Why Not 15 Reasons to Live, was adapted into a documentary.
Yeah.
Are you interested in other kinds of multimedia projects connected to your writing? Would you like to do some more of that?
If they give me money, yeah. That would be great. I'll do anything. I'm always. It's ironic that I've had a few books optioned. The only one they ever made a movie out of was a book of essays. So it's kind of, I think this book would make a good movie because it would be cheap to make because there's not a lot of action. It's set, and I think that it would be, but I don't actively pursue it. When it happens, it always seems like it's a nice thing. Like if someone says, "Oh, this might be interesting," I say, "Sure," and then either the money runs out or they run out of interest or whatever. In terms of me writing anything, I'm really not. I mean, I think I have enough respect for the craft of people who work like in screenwriting, like good movies, like which are few and far between, but we all have them. The ones that we own on DVD and that we watch every year, and you think, well, I haven't spent the amount of time that they have watching, thousands of. I love movies, we all do, but I feel that I paid my dues and I know what I'm talking about on the page, but in terms of turning it into something else, that wouldn't mean though that I wouldn't be open to someone saying, hey, I think this would make something, good. The novel, the next novel, it's called 3 Men in a Shed, a novel in 6 episodes. It's literally 3 old men sitting in a shed talking. And I think it would make a great podcast or a great, whatever the kids call them now, the web series or whatever, right? It's literally 3 Men in a Shed. And I think that's exciting. But am I going to go out and get another film agent, hit that? No, I kind of let these things come to me. I seem to be busy enough that I don't have to worry too much about how other ways I could be fulfilled. I got enough on my plate, but certainly, yeah, it's intoxicating, right? To see things on stage. I mean, Kim, you do a lot of that, right? It's you can't help it. I remember going to the premiere of the documentary that was made of Why Not 50 Reasons to Live. Was called 15 Reasons to Live, and it was at Hot Docs, and it's kind of depressing at first. You sit down. Well, first of all, there's like 600 people there. I've never had 600 people at a reading for one of my. I think Kim and I had 20 people at our last event, right? And we were lucky. Yeah. For ours, okay, 30. But but there's 600 people, and then the movie comes on, the sound and the colors, but then about halfway through, I thought, yeah, this is good, but it can't do what a book does, where you can be quiet and go little places, a little parenthetical inside and stuff. So I have a bit of envy for those art forms that are so immediate, but I pretty much sort of cast my lot with the written word. And if it turns into something else, that's great. I am intrigued by the idea of like a web series or something with this other, because I really was inspired by a lot of British, like the original, the British Office, and Sharon Hogan's show Pulling, these TV series. So I'm kind of interested in that because it's 100% dialogue as well. It's something new. I don't know about you two either, but you kind of want to try different things with different books that sort of have, you just want challenges, So one of my things in this book was it's going to be 100% dialogue. And I kind of got the idea of that, going back to our book, Estates Large and Small, from the dialogue between Phil and Caroline when they talked about philosophy, where he records them. He doesn't really know why, but he was writing them down. So and I kind of got the idea from that. I thought, hey, that's kind of, you pretty much know who's talking, and oh, that's interesting, So that's kind of one of the things that, going back to one of your first questions, well, what keeps you going? It's sort of like new challenges, and for yourself, because that's really what it is. It's nice when people invite you on your podcast, even though you're late in coming to them. But the real fun is, those 3 hours that you spend and you go, I think I made a little progress, or I think I'm a little more aware of what's going on. Oh, it's working. It's those quiet days. Those quiet days where you just sort of quietly say, and we all like the big moments, like, the book arrives, oh, it looks great, or, you get a review or something, but that kind of wears off. It's like potato chips. It's fun, and you want more. But it's not the same as, okay, I finished, now I'm going to, go to the gym or take the dog for a walk and have dinner. It's that kind of quiet, contented feeling. And I think that's one of the things that is going, is these different, like nonfiction, fiction, or a fiction that's kind of unorthodox, like that, just to sort of, give yourself, and really the same thing that started you decades ago. It's fun. If it's not fun, I got some advice for you. No one really cares. You better have fun. You better enjoy it. And maybe you will get a few other like-minded individuals, but it's a small community, in spite of what, the government says and big business. Oh, we support the art, So yeah, keeping yourself amused, I think, is the number one goal for not fame and fortune.
That's right.
Not that I know about it, but yeah.
As one of my early mentors used to say, I'll keep doing it as long as I'm having fun and still learning something, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And I even heard Steve Earle, the musician, said once, and they said, he's 60 something, he's had highs and lows, and he said, at this point, my idea of success is I don't have to pay for the CDs to be made.
Yeah.
Someone else is paying for it. Like, that's success.
Mm-hmm.
It's not coming out of my pocket. Whether it succeeds in the world, or that's beyond me. Sometimes yes, sometimes no, So yeah, having fun and someone being interested, but you can't control that stuff. You could follow the stock market of, oh, I'm up, I'm down, or whatever. You're always going to be behind somebody. You're always not going to have as much as somebody else. Someone else is always going to have it better than you do. It's human nature not to say, yeah, but I have it better than them. No, I know about that, but why aren't I there? It's human nature, and I've recognized that, and I know I'm never going to shake it. So you just sort of pretend that it's not there, and you just enjoy your days. That's all. That's the biggest thing I know about life. Just enjoy your days, and as you get older and the people care about you sort of drop off, you realize that's really the lesson that's left. The only thing you can sort of gain from their loss is, my wife, a friend of ours, has been dead for a few years now, and he'd say, oh, so-and-so can't enjoy this beautiful walk we're having, and sort of makes their lives seem less gone. It's like they would, if they were here, they wouldn't complain that it's a little overcast. It's like, you're walking, it's beautiful, and a dog, right? So yeah, enjoy every day.
Well, speaking of enjoyment, we would love it if you could read some work for our audience.
Okay, I'll just start from the beginning. It's nice. It just, to me, the initial thing is the voice. So if I'm interested in the voice, I'll follow the voice. So I'm just going to read a little bit from the very beginning. Brick and mortar, horse and buggy, say hello to tomorrow today. But I'm down. I'm not out. Not yet, anyway. If readers won't come to the bookstore, then the bookstore will have to come to them. A virtual bookstore with 10,000 or so more than virtual books, as well as full-on, full-time partnership with abooks.com, the very sort of e-commerce marketplace. That's one of several reasons why I'm in the position I'm in now. I miss having somewhere to go every day and people to talk to once in a while. But on the other hand, it's nice not to put your pants on. It's nice not to have to wear pants to work if you don't feel like it. Or a mask. You win some, you lose some. It's how you keep score that counts. But even if head office and the warehouse do happen to share the same mailing address as your house, that doesn't mean you always get to do whatever you want. Until every one of those 10,000 books that used to fill the shelves of the Queen Street West bookstore I owned for more than 21 years is inputted and eventually put online, every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday means my nephew Benjamin and having to be up and fully dressed by 11 a.m. It's difficult to inspire loyalty and dedication in your staff while attired in a house coat and flip-flops. And today there's someone else too, Cameron, from something called Toronto West Social Media Solution. The world, it seems, is increasingly populated with Benjamins and Camerons. At what point did parents come to believe that bestowing their children with 3-syllable names increases their offspring's chances of being private school world worthy? My own childhood was full of Davids and Donnas, Julies and Jims, names remarkable only for their ordinariness. Of course, I wouldn't trust a nature writer who never stepped outside, so my offspring-free opinions about contemporary child rearing are likely equally suspect. Doesn't stop me from having them, though. The only child in my life is my mother, and that's not cruel, that's the truth. Or maybe it's both. Either way, it's not my fault, just like it's not hers. Besides, it's not so bad. Oh, it's bad. Retirement home, borderline dementia bad, but it could be worse. Much worse. Mom isn't Alzheimer's losing it. Doesn't forget none of the really important stuff, least of all the name of somebody she knew 60 years ago. And the rheumatoid arthritis in her hands and feet and knees accepted. For an 81-year-old woman, she's shipshape physically. She's just losing it. And it seems as if she's having a pretty good time doing so. 40 years ago, she'd just be called Dottie. What we call things matter. Words matter. My mother was just Dottie. I was going to end there, but I can't end with my mother being Dottie because she'll probably list. I got to read one more paragraph. until another hour until the doorbell at Benjamin, and an hour after that, the person from the social media company. But I can't complain. I've been my own boss for a long time. Haven't had to endure chattering coworkers or team building exercises or casual Fridays for just as long. The massive men wish they led lives of quiet desperation. You meet someone, they ask you how you got into the used book business, and you say something about always wanting to be a writer or an English professor and neither being in the cards and always loving books. It's just making sense, and that's all true. But it's not the truth, not the entire truth. I like sleeping in, and I don't enjoy chit-chat, and I can never listen to someone else's music all day at work. So I had to run my own business. Not that every hour is my own until all of the books are online. I still need to periodically replenish the store's stock, the healthy red corpuscles of any respectable used bookstore, which is why I need widows. The wives of dead collectors are my bibliophilic blood supply. Not that there aren't women who are collectors themselves who die and leave behind houses full of suddenly superfluous books. There are. I bought a few of their collection, but it's mostly men, and they usually die before their wives, and it's the widows I ordinarily deal with. Women, I found, tend to be the better, more knowledgeable readers. Men, the more conspicuous collectors. The widows call me on the telephone and invite me into their homes, and I spend an hour or so sorting through a lifetime of fervent collecting before eventually making them a cash offer for the recently deceased dear one's lifelong labor of love. I don't buy textbooks, musical scores, or encyclopedias, and what I'm most interested in is literature. All genres, including criticism, history, philosophy, and biography. And no, I can't give you a rough idea of how much I think your collection is worth without first looking at it in person. But I do buy entire estates, large and small. Before any of that, though, a shit, hopefully, a shower and a shave, probably, breakfast, almost certainly. At 52 years old, you learn not to take anything for granted. Visit enough widows, you discover the same thing.
Thank you so much, Ray Robertson. That latest book is Estates Large and Small, and we'll put links to that on our website.
Yeah, and I'll do the same. That was when it's so nice to talk to people who care about books. It's just great. I had a wonderful time.
Thanks for joining us. Look for more episodes of All Right in Sin City wherever you listen to podcasts, or check out our website, allrightinsincity.com. For information and announcements of new podcasts, sign up to our email list or follow us on Facebook and Twitter.